So let's talk about Terre de Hermes, shall we? Did you hear that there's a new flanker to the long-standing Terre de Hermes series of fragrances called Eau Givree? So it's Hermes, Terre de Hermes Eau Givree, launching very soon. So today I'm going to discuss this brand new flanker to the popular Terre de Hermes series of fragrances from Hermes, and also talk about the 4 current Terre de Hermes fragrances on the market. So find out about Terre de Hermes Eau Givree and the previous Terre de Hermes fragrances coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, today I'm talking about Terre de Hermes Eau Givree, an upcoming release from the house of Hermes, brand new men's fragrance. This is the first men's fragrance since H24 last year. This is a fragrance created by Christine Nagel. 3 of the previous Terre de Hermes fragrances were created by Jean-Claude Ellena. 1 of them was created Christine Nagel, and I'm going to get into all of the details about this particular fragrance. You know, I was a huge fan of the original. When it first launched, I wore so much of it. I'll tell you how I found out about it and all that good stuff. But before I get to the fragrances, if this is your first time tuning into the channel, please click the subscribe button and also click the bell so that you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. So how many of you is a fan of the Terre de Hermes series of fragrances? There's currently 4. There's a 5th one on the way. But the only issue is Eau Très Fraîche. I just discovered that it's not on the USA Hermes website. I did see it on the French Hermes website, so I'm not sure if it's discontinued. Is it just not sold here in the States anymore? But what the status on that particular fragrance is. But it's available at Sephora in the USA online, and then also Sephora in France. So I don't know the status on that particular fragrance, but the other 3 fragrances are still on the Hermes website. But I'm excited about the new flanker, Eau Givree, a 2022 launch. This is the 5th flanker of the series, or the 5th fragrance of the series. But this particular one doesn't sound like it's going to smell like the original Terre de Hermes or the Parfum version. It seems like it's going in a different direction, going into a spicy, aromatic, citrusy direction from what I see in the notes. It's got aromatic notes of juniper berries, spicy, peppery notes of Timut pepper, and then also Cedrat. So it's a kind of a tart, citrusy experience contrasted with the aromatic notes of the juniper berry with the Timut pepper. So in the end, I feel like this is going to go into a woody direction, of course. It seems like it's going to have lots of aromatic touches in there, and of course it's going to be spicy and citrusy. So I guess we'll have to wait to see how it is. I was a pretty big fan of H24 when it came out last year, although I've always mentioned it smells great to me. It just needs some oomph to it, like some intensity, some depth to it. So I'm hoping that there's going to be a flanker to that, a much thicker, deeper, richer flanker to that fragrance. But this one, I'm not sure yet. I like the notes. I'm not sure what they're going to do with it, because Eau Très Fraîche here, out of the 3 other fragrances in the current collection, smells different than the other 3, whereas the other 3 kind of have similarities throughout it, not identical. This one to me doesn't smell like the other 3, with a very distant reminder in the background of the original Terre de Hermes. So I feel like Eau Givree is also going to go in a different direction, but perhaps not, because the Intense Vetiver version, the last flanker that came out, does feature this kind of peppery note as well. So perhaps it's an evolution of the last flanker that came out with the new Eau Givree. Let me know if you're excited for this particular flanker that's coming out soon. Should be landing very soon, within the month, I'm assuming. And always excited for Hermes. I feel like Hermes as a brand is a great house. They have some great fragrances, but definitely not one of the hyped brands in the community. I feel like maybe their fragrances do have a little bit more of a classic edge to them. Perhaps that's why they're not so hyped. Or maybe their fragrances are not so modern, or I don't know, like they're not like following other brands where they keep emulating fragrances from one brand to the other, whereas Hermes doesn't do that kind of a thing. They slowly crank out fragrances, although now it's been a year from the last men's fragrance to this year, but I think they kind of pretty slowly launch fragrances. But I'm always looking forward to trying new fragrances from houses, especially houses like Hermes. So Eau Givree sounds really, really great, so I'm excited for that, and then I'm excited to get my nose on it very, very soon. One thing I should also mention before I move on to the 4 current on the market Hermes Terre de Hermes fragrances, there used to be a fragrance from Avon, I guess it launched in the early 80s, called Eau Givree. Green kind of citrusy fragrance. I'm uncertain if it's still in existence, probably long gone, long discontinued, but when I looked up Eau Givree on the databases, Avon's Eau Givree came up. Has anyone smelled Avon Eau Givree? It's interesting. I have not put my nose on a single Avon fragrance since the 80s, probably the early 90s. So I don't know what kind of fragrances Avon is doing, but I'm curious to smell Eau Givree if I can get my hands on it. So let's get to the original Terre de Hermes from 2006. Here's my bottle here. And the original Terre de Hermes I first discovered by reading an article in a magazine called Departures. There was a tiny little article in that magazine in 2006. I read about how Jean-Claude Ellena created this particular fragrance. So this is way before I got heavily into doing anything with perfumes, such as reviewing or collecting. So that particular article excited me enough to actually seek out Terre de Hermes and get a bottle. At that time, I wasn't, like hot on buying brand new fragrances. I'd go to the stores every once in a while and smell something and pick up something. But that actual article triggered me to buy this Terre de Hermes, and seeked it out and looked for it, and ended up at Nordstrom and bought a bottle. This is probably the 3rd bottle that I've had, but launched in 2006, created by Jean-Claude Ellena, and it's a fragrance that supposedly that there's vetiver in here, and I think there is, just the Hermes website does not mention vetiver, but to me there's a very minerally earthy kind of quality to this. Most likely there's vetiver here because I do smell that kind of vetiver touch, but according to the Hermes website, there's flint stone, there's orange, there's grapefruit, and black pepper. Seems like black pepper or some kind of a Timut pepper, Sichuan pepper kind of runs throughout the entire collection. So it's been a favorite of mine, although I've kind of slipped. It's kind of slipped, and I actually, once I discovered the Parfum version of this, that became my favorite because it eventually became a more deeper, richer, probably a little amberier version of the original. But I think Terre de Hermes has a lot of meaning to me today still, because it's one of those fragrances, not as exciting as something like Mugler's Amen or L'Instant de Guerlain pour Homme Extreme, but still something that actually piqued my interest in digging into perfumes and reviewing and things like that. But smelling it today, and from what I remember smelling back in 2006, it's funny because my very first bottle was a 50 ml. I didn't have the budget for perfumes back then and things like that, and now I have the bigger bottles. But it reminds me, it doesn't seem like it's been altered, that's what I'm trying to say. Like it hasn't gone through a massive reformulation or thinning or watering down of the fragrance, if that makes sense. So in the end, I think it's a great, solid, classy masculine fragrance. I know a lot of folks that wear this. In fact, I smell it on people, not recently, but I have smelled it over and over on people, on men mostly, and I feel like this has a very, very big following, and I could see that because it smells great. It's citrusy, it's woody, it's earthy, maybe a little grassy, and minerally as well. So that's the first fragrance launched in 2006 in this series. This is Terre de Hermes in the Eau de Toilette concentration. Moving on to Terre de Hermes Parfum, launched in 2009, so 3 years after the original Terre de Hermes in the Eau de Toilette concentration. And basically this one was also created by Jean-Claude Ellena. He was the in-house perfumer at Hermes for some time. He recently retired like 3-4 years ago from Hermes. He's no longer doing a lot of perfumes. It keeps coming up here and there. But this particular one I felt like once I discovered it, I kind of dumped the original Hermes, Terre de Hermes, went towards this one, because definitely this does go into an ambery direction. Hence, it has the addition of benzoin. So there's benzoin added in here. And what do I say about benzoin and things like that in fragrances? They do create an ambery touch to the fragrances. So even though it does not mention this flint stone, the vetiver note that we know exists in these fragrances, Hermes website mentions benzoin, cedar, shiso, and grapefruit. Shiso is this kind of herbal, Japanese herbal note, kind of has a minty, light mintiness, not overly minty quality to the fragrance, to the note is what I should say. But the combination of the kind of very, very sweet orange contrasted with the sweet benzoin against the woodiness and the aromatic touches is quite great. And as I said, this one was my favorite for a long time. The Parfum is deeper, definitely richer, more dense, and it seems a little more heavier. You know, I enjoy my fragrances to be heavy and concentrated, and this definitely has the thickness, the concentration that I wanted from the original Terre de Hermes. So that's what the differences are to me. You might smell them a little different too, because there's the addition of the ambery touches, which the original does not have. So you'll experience a different wearing experience, which I quite like. I do enjoy it here. It is warmed up with the benzoin. It is deepened and enriched and things like that as well. So Terre de Hermes in the pure Parfum version is the second fragrance that came out from the Terre de Hermes series of fragrances. So the third flanker in the series of Terre de Hermes fragrances is Eau Très Fraîche. This to me seems the most distant from having anything to do with the original Terre de Hermes and the Parfum version. And this is the last flanker that Jean-Claude Ellena created. This launched in 2014. I recently featured it in an underrated, fragrances from different brands. I quite like it. I enjoyed it. It's also great in the summertime. The other thing is Jean-Claude Ellena, who created this, also created something similar to this for the House of Frederic Malle. And going back to what I said earlier, this is not on the Hermes.com USA website. It is on the Hermes.fr website. So I don't know the status of this particular fragrance here in the States. Is it discontinued or is it just out of stock? It didn't say out of stock. I couldn't find the product. But either way, it's available in France and it's available at discounters as well. So 2014, and this one features grapefruit, bitter orange, aldehydes, and cedar. So the aldehydes is what creates this kind of watery effect running throughout the fragrance. There's definitely kind of watery consistency here. Very, very fresh, very, very fizzy, sparkling, and kind of like, I wouldn't say ethereal, like floaty, but there's this kind of airiness about the particular fragrance. But you definitely experience lots of grapefruit here. There's a kind of a, zing to it, a little spice to the fragrance with those grapefruit note. Plus the bitter orange has light bitterness, but sweetness as well. So kind of a balanced kind of a citrus note in here, contrasted against the aldehydes and of course the cedar note in the base. There's definitely a little cumin touch in here, and I think this has become a little turn off to some folks. If you're very, very sensitive to cumin, you might not dig this one. I quite like it in here. It's a great contrast, and it makes for a unique, more interesting journey in the fragrance, in addition to all the notes that are listed here. I really do like this one, and I think it's a great summer wear, fresh wear, and a perfect wear. And again, it's the most unrelated to the collection, but I think it's really, really a solid release. So Terre de Hermes Eau Très Fraîche from 2014 is the third flanker in the series of Terre de Hermes fragrances. And finally, in 2017, the collection brought on Eau Intense Vetiver, this one right here. So this one was the only one, or is the only one, created by Christine Nagel until the new one that's going to launch very soon. This came out in 2018. It features notes of green bergamot, Sichuan pepper, and vetiver. So the Hermes website does list vetiver here. Was there no vetiver in the other three fragrances? I always thought that they were vetiver fragrances. I think there are. They're just not listing the notes. Here, I feel like it is definitely going into a more grassy, earthy direction, and there's a little bit of a dampness about this vetiver, and then also, humid. Like there's a humidity about it, but intensifying the spiciness as well, and adding lots of citrusy touches in the experience, or the fragrance wearing experience. The Sichuan pepper that's in here has a little bit of a lemony touch to the fragrance, so it's kind of like a lemon black pepper kind of a combo, or maybe lemon pink pepper kind of combo, but you do experience some light lemony touches, which is kind of a nice contrast to the actual Vetiver, which is basically the prominent running note in this particular fragrance. Do I like it as much as Terre de Hermes, the original, or actually I should say the Parfum version? I prefer the Parfum version still, but this is not a bad fragrance. It's definitely quite solid, but I feel like by the time the third fragrance came out, the Eau Très Fraîche, I feel like I got a little bored of the Terre de Hermes fragrances, and it does smell a little like the Terre de Hermes fragrances, the first two, but then it doesn't, if that makes sense. So I got a little bored of it. I was expecting something a little more unique, or something a little more interesting, or something a little different. So you might like it. I know it has fans. They've kept it in the collection, although it's the newest in the collection, and now we have 4 years later the new one that's coming out very soon. But Eau Intense Vetiver in the Terre de Hermes collection of fragrances is the fourth and last flanker currently on the market. So that's pretty much it for today's video. I just wanted to kind of do a highlight on the 4 current Terre de Hermes fragrances, and also bring up the fact that I'm excited for the Eau Givree version of flanker that's coming out very soon. I'm excited for this one, and as I said, I think this one is going to go in a different direction. I'm hoping it does, and I hope it doesn't smell too much like the original Terre de Hermes fragrances. I want something different, but then again, if it's so different, it shouldn't be under the Terre de Hermes collection, should it? I don't know. We shall see how it is, but I'm definitely looking forward to this one. I do enjoy Christine Nagel's creations. I really enjoyed H24. Only negative, remark I had about that fragrance was the fact that it was very, very light and mostly a skin scent. So I wanted some oomph to the fragrance. So we shall see how Eau Givree is. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. Let me know if you're excited for the new Terre de Hermes Eau Givree coming out soon. Let me know if you like the current 4 Terre de Hermes fragrances. I'd like to find out which is your favorite. And if you don't like this collection of fragrances, let me know. Put a comment down. Lastly, let me know if you're a fan of the House of Hermes. It doesn't get a lot of hype. It doesn't get a lot of talk, but it definitely deserves to. Anyway, I appreciate you tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, please do list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.